Back with Savatage. I'm gonna credit you for a lot of things that are happening right now because after John did that interview, the next day I started to get phone calls and emails and people were going, Savatage is gonna do a new record. That's great. I was like, we are? Because he never, I mean, we've been writing and we talked about it, but there was no plan. But once you had that interview, I started getting Mexico, Canada, South America, and the management did two festivals, promoters of Savatage is going to be touring and playing. And I really think that it helped spark, the attention on us worldwide. It might have really helped, funnel all the offers that came to us because last year around this time, maybe a month earlier, we had no idea we were going to be playing, and management called us up. Kenny and Adam were like, we want to have a conference call with you guys about Savatage. I had no idea why, and they said, well, we have some really good festival offers, and we want to know what you guys think. I mean, I practically started crying. I mean, as everybody knows, I've been waiting for this for 20 years. So I'm so happy to hear it happen, but I've been saying to people in interviews that, and I wasn't sure exactly. I knew it was Rock Hard Grease, but I wasn't sure it was you. I even said to Kenny, I said, did he do that interview with John a couple years ago? What was that, 2020? That interview? Is that
It
the
was,
COVID year?
no, it was 2023, if I can remember well.
Really? It was okay, so it wasn't that long. Yeah, but whenever it happened, it got everybody talking, and it was a from there. I mean, look where we are now.
Yeah, you know what? Uh, I had a friend of mine at home saying we were listening to the then forthcoming album of Zach with Circle to Circle, and he asked me, "What is John Oliva doing?" And I told him, "Let me send him an email to see what is he doing." And he responded immediately. And I told him, "Would you like to do an interview?" And he told me, "Sure, man. I would do anything for you. Just tell me the day." And we arranged an interview. It was 2:30 after midnight. But I wouldn't miss that opportunity to speak with John again after so many years. So we did the interview from 2:30 to 4:30. It was Good Friday. I clearly remember that. And when I finished, when John was talking about I had prepared 10 questions for him in order to get to the Savadas thing. And when he picked up the phone, he started saying that as if he wanted desperately to come out of his mouth and me to be the messenger of it. And I was always looking at the record button. Am I recording this? Is it okay? Uh, uh, has he said his thing? And as soon as he finished the interview, I couldn't believe my ears. And I was about to ask you that thing about this interview. And uh, he revealed his plans for the future. He kept on telling me how overwhelmed he had been from the response he got from the people when they heard that Savatage was still alive in a way. He kept on sending me emails saying, "I can't believe this feeling, how people feel about Savatage." Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I always knew that, and I always saw the different countries because I was very active on my social media since, the 90s, and I knew where the hot spots were and where people were coming in and what they were saying to me, and I was constant, it would be not a lot. I mean, a couple times a year, I would get festivals asking, "Hey, would you guys want to do this? Would you guys want to do that?" And I just tell them, I don't have any news on that, and when I do, I'll let people know. But I watched things growing and building with Savatage. I could see the young fans. I was teaching guitar lessons for students that were 17 years old that were in Savatage cover bands. They were not alive when we were playing the last time. It's like they discovered Savatage's music, and it just has that longevity and that that lifetime, the music that Chris and John and with Paul and the band had produced all those years. It's timeless, and for me, it means so much to be able to play that music again, not only for the people that have been waiting like I have to play it, but for the people that never had a chance to see it. And we never broke up. That's the one thing that I always got me when I was doing interviews and I would see Chris Caffery ex Savatage. It's like Savatage never broke up. We just stopped playing. It was I kind of compared to like, the Austin Powers movie where he was frozen cryogenically for all those years. It's like we were just frozen and waiting, and now, we've been evacuation complete. It's like we're back out, and it really feels great. I missed this. This part of this band being in my life was such a huge part of my heart and soul, and I was just waiting to be able to have it as a part of my daily schedule again when I'm doing my emails or doing my practicing or whatever it is I'm preparing for. I'm packing right now for Europe, and it's with Savatage. It's just a really good feeling. It's like there's a good balance. It was something that I missed a real lot, and you can never really put it in words to people when you talked about it, because it was hard to explain. But that was like, the band I got into when I had just turned 19, and it was such a big part of my life. And not that the other things I've done haven't been great bands, and I was blessed to be a part of TSO since day one, and I always look forward to keeping Paul's legacy alive every time we go on tour with that. But there was just something about Savatage to me that was really personal. It especially with what Chris and John had done for me, offering me a chance to be in their band, and I always felt like I'd left Chris down. So when we stopped playing, it just made me feel, bad about the fact that I wasn't able to keep his music alive anymore, at that point in time. So that's why I dove into the world of me doing my solo music. I think more than joining another band is just because I didn't want to join another band. To me, I was still in Savatage, and if I joined another
You don't
band,
have conflicts, schedule
then
conflicts.
I would be putting the stamp on Savatage being over if I joined another band. And I never joined. I did, a project band with Frontiers, and I toured with Doro, and I toured with Ripper, I toured Metal Church, and I did my thing, but that's different. It's different if you're doing your own solo thing. I never put myself as in a, member forever of another band other than Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which is, that was Paul and John and the Savatage family with the O'Neill family anyway. So that wasn't, leaving Savatage technically to be in TSO. That was all in the same family. But to join another quote unquote heavy metal band, that was something that I never would let myself do it. I was like, no, I'm gonna wait this out. But unfortunately, time went like this after Vakken, and then Paul died a couple years later, and that hit us like a brick. And I'm still trying to recover from that. It's not, now we're doing the Savatage tour. How much I'd love to be able to be talking to Paul about what we're doing, to be planning this with him. I mean, it's like like I said, it's bad enough that I'd lost Chris, but losing Paul is like that was the person that I always went to whenever I had personal problems in my life. So with Paul being gone, it's like you have to kind of chime into yourself. But like I said, having Savatage back gives me a really strong balance. And I think the fans make that possible because I think they felt the same way I did. Once we announced we were going to play again, I think everybody just got really happy the same way I did. It was just, it didn't even feel like we stopped. It's so weird. We went down there and we went to do a sound check the night before the first Monsters of Rock show. And I was like, did not seem like it was that long. And then we started playing, and it's just, it felt like it was a couple years ago. It was kind of weird. And it felt like we were like the Scorpions said when they opened their set when they sang "Coming Home." That's exactly what it felt like to me.
Coming home, yeah. So many things to ask you about. Let's say the live shows. So, how did you end up with the current version of Believe that John Oliva sings? The first verse is on video and Zach goes on. It has been a huge surprise for everybody and a highly emotional moment, even if you watch it on video.
Well, I was kind of being like a little bit over active on what we could do. I was like, is there any possible way we could like put John on his keyboard in a room with the camera and we could line up playing the whole show with him? That was my first thing in like last October, November. And everybody's like, no. I was like, well, technology has to be able to do something. And then all of a sudden, we were getting ready to go to do the rehearsals. And they said, well, John's in the studio today. He's filming the video for Believe. And I was like, oh. So, the my first light bulb that went over my head was there's got to be a way, because he was involved with every single second with this whole entire coming back of Savatage. He was putting set lists together. He was at our rehearsals. We were, discussing everything with him. He just wasn't physically able to do the live shows right now. So, once I knew he was filming that video, it really made me happy to know that there was a plan to get him in the show. And then when my dog, hold on a second, I got to give him, yeah, so it was great. I didn't watch the whole video. I saw some of it and I rehearsed to the audio, and then we're on stage playing the video. And I heard that, Chris was coming into the video in the solo section. And I turn around and look at it while we're playing on the stage, and I see the pictures of me and him, and I just started crying. It was like, oh my God, I the reason why I was there at that show was him. It's like he created a position for me in his band. I always say that to people when they talk about what's going on with Savatage now, and they go, well, it's you guys are playing without the Olivas. There's no original members, and I'm always like, aha, not true, because Savatage was a four-piece band until me, and I was the original Chris Caffery. So it's like there was never a fifth member of Savatage. Not like they formed as a five-piece and I took a job from somebody who left the band. The part was created for me. So I am back doing a part in the band that was created for me by the Olivas and Paul O'Neill. So technically, I'm the original Chris Caffery.
Yeah, but also technically, I could say that all current Savatage members have been playing for Savatage for more than 10 years. So
Oh yeah.
you cannot say that this is not Savatage.
Oh, exactly. I just,
how can one say that? And you play together in TSO for so many years, and you
yeah,
play Savatage songs with TSO. For God's sake, okay.
exactly. There's always going to be somebody that I always say nowadays, like even if people are happy with something, you get more of a reaction. Say 1,000 people are happy with something and two people aren't. The 998 people, if they speak about it, they don't get any attention. The two people that say they're unhappy get the attention. So a lot of times I think even if people like something, they have to say something. I don't, I just am happy to be playing again. And I think we counted up between me, Zach, Johnny, Jeff, and Al. We have like 170 years of Savatage. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. That's a lot of. If that's not enough, I don't know what to say. So it's fun, and like I said, John's there every second he can be, and I'm just happy that we're doing that music again. When we were down in Florida rehearsing, it was 3 full weeks that we rehearsed for the South American tour, and it was just so much fun to walk back into Morrisound, which is now Night Castle Studios, with those guys once again, and be playing this music every day. And we spent half our time saying Philly jokes and just being the way we've always been. And it's just like I said, it's felt like I've been coming home the whole entire time. And I was fine with whatever set list we came up with. They were asking me about it. I said, look, you can't ask me to pick a set list because it'll be 5 hours long. I said, so whatever you want to play, make sure that you don't leave out a couple songs. And I stated the obvious ones that I thought, but it's fun, man. I'm looking for. I can't wait to get back over to to Europe and get on a tour bus with Savatage. We went to South America and we were in hotels and we were flying.
Yeah.
So we were out on a tour, but it was kind of like small doses of how you feel when now when we load in that bus and we're driving from, there's 8 different countries we're going to be seeing. That's when it really feels like you're back on a tour. So it's like it's just going to be fun, being over there and when I finally get back to Greece, which has always been someplace that's very special to me. It's been a long time, so
Hmm.
I can't wait for that.
Playing these songs live now, do you feel that no time has passed? Did you have to learn them from scratch while revising them for tour?
Here's the weird thing. I played through the whole entire catalog, every record. I knew songs I never played right away. And I've played songs I used to play differently immediately in the leads and parts. And I was sending recordings to Zach, and he was like, "It sounds exactly like the record." I said, "Yeah, I can't, I don't know what the heck is going on." I did not have to practice, really not at all, other than like learning Morning Sun, which I wrote and played. I couldn't remember what I did, but the
Do you remember Chris's parts?
exactly it was, if I had to go over the little parts for Dead Winter Dead that I played, I had to go, what did I do there? And the harmonies to put those things together in the solo. But Chris's stuff came to me naturally, and some of the stuff I'd never played before, or never worked on the solos or anything. And I was just like, I either, just a lot of my playing morphed towards him as I got older because of how much he taught me and how many years I played his music, or there's something crazy going on because it just is it's fun, but it's definitely easier for me to play them now than ever. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and how different is it performing Savatage songs with TSO than performing it with the other Savatage members? Because most of you play with TSO together.
The thing about that is you're always so proud of being a part of Savatage and making those songs. A lot of the songs we played with TSO that were Savatage songs, a lot of them were done, in the years in the Dead Winter Dead years and the Wake of Magellan and Handful, the years that we were involved in the band and you were just really proud to see, those creations go to that level of production and I'm up there playing, wasn't from one of the more recent records, but you go and play the Prelude to Madness as we had titled at the beginning of the mountain for TSO, and you're up there in the middle of an arena on a riser with all this stuff, and it was just like, I would always sit there and be like, man, if I was just able to be, and not that I didn't love playing with the guitar players I did in that situation, it's like me and Al basically were separated on those tours, the East and West. So I really didn't partner with the Savatage guitar player other than the Beethoven's Last Night tours and the European tours we did. But, I would always be like, man, if I was able to see the look on Chris Oliva's face, if we were playing that stuff under that circumstance, his creations on those risers and that production. But it's just a lot of fun, we did hit the Streets record quite a bit with some things and a lot of times in ballad form and Believe was re-recorded onto a TSO record, which was really special and in the last year there was an acoustic version of When the Crowds Are Gone that was being done and so you just sit there. I mean, I was thinking about that when we were playing Crowds and that was 1990 when we shot that video. So I think back to the memories of being in that theater that day recording that song. And, we did have a tiny little orchestra with the band at that time in the video. So you think back to then, like, Paul's vision of how to build the rock band with the orchestra and have the rock theater and how that all just came alive through the years. And it was always a great feeling. Of course, and that was magnified to a whole different level when we did it on multiple stages at Vakken. I mean, that was crazy. having two stages going with all the TSO and Savatage band members, and Paul had pyro out in the fields away from the stage, and I was up on stage and going, I don't remember there being pyro in the fields. And I said to Paul, I said, there's pyro in the fields. And he goes, I know, isn't that cool? I was like, yeah, it's just,
Were
I
you
mean,
discussing were you discussing a comeback after the reunion of Savatas for Wacken 2015?
yeah, we had discussed starting things back up again at that time. And, there was discussions of Paul wanted to do more shows in that format. He mentioned to me he said, I'd love to do it in Egypt and the pyramids, and I'd love to do it in the ruins of Greece to have the two giant stages. And so he had mentioned that, and we just talked about, maybe Paul was like, I think it's time we get Sabotage rolling again. And he passed away. It wasn't very long after that. So it was like getting hit with a brick. We spent a couple of years trying to just balance our heads into being back out on the road and keeping his creation alive with TSO. That was hard enough at the time, and then we got smacked in the face with COVID, and that just stripped away more time. And then, when you think about it now, it's been 10 years since
Yeah, and
since
John
the
faced
Rocket show.
multiple.
It's like
Yeah, and John
you
faced
blink your
multiple.
eyes, you don't want another 10 years to go by. And people at this point in time in our life, we've lost so many friends and family members, and it's just like it's time not to. I think it was time not to waste any more time. It's like it's too valuable. Paul would always say that the time was the most valuable asset, and we want to take advantage of that. And
Mhm.
it felt, like I said, it felt really good to be out there, and I can't wait to play again in Greece. It was funny. My management was like, we would fly home after the show, and they had it set up for me to leave the next day, but they wanted to fly me from Saloniki into Athens and to go home. And like, well, be sure you get your connection. Are you okay to get up and be at the airport at 6 a.m.? And I'm like, no. It's like, there's no way I'm going to finish that Rockwave show and go to the hotel and get to the airport at 4 in the morning. So I talked to some of my friends that are going to be up there from Athens, and I'm going to road trip it with them after I wake up on Sunday and head to Athens for the night and go out somewhere. We should have a post tour, little thing somewhere and say hi to people that I haven't seen in a long time. And I fly home on the Monday, so I got myself an extra day in Greece, and I'm really happy about that. I was not only just the time, I wasn't going to be ready to leave there that fast. I wanted to get a little more time, so I'm happy to be able to be in Athens more than just my connecting flight.
Yeah, and you surely remember that 20, 21 years ago, you had been coming to Athens very regularly because of your solo albums with Black Lotus, and we used to hang out together a bit of these years when you had your albums out.
Yeah, I used to take I had a bunch of trips out there. I enjoyed it. I remember even, going and spending time on that little island, Spetses, that was
Yeah, we
off the
we had this thing with Spetses. We had arranged to go out, and we canceled each other's appointment.
Okay.
We both went to Spetses, and we were staying in an opposite apartment. That was really 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 funny. We didn't
Yeah,
meet in Athens, and we met in Spetses.
that's so
We lived in the
funny.
same apartment, the same block of flats. So, about the album, is it going to be called The Final Curtain, as John had revealed? And in which stage are you at?
I don't know. I mean, he's going to try to keep his title, but he's writing more and everybody's writing, there's probably more songs than a record, and who knows, if we're planning on playing for longer than just now, I think that my way of looking at it is he wanted to call it curtain call. I think it wasn't the final curtain because the final curtain was the name of was the final bell was the name of the Chris Oliva. So he wanted to call it curtain call.
Curtain call, yeah.
But yeah, but I was thinking about I'm like, well, it has been if you're going by years, 24 years since we released Poets. So perhaps the curtain call is to rise the curtain up again, not down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would love to see it be the beginning of a new chapter instead of the end of everything. And I think everybody kind of feels that same way. I don't think John really knew what to expect when he first started talking to you about this. So that's where he was just saying, well, I'd like to do
Yeah.
one final record, but
Yeah, but he has material for 4 records as he
that's what
also
I'm saying. I know John. I know John. It's
better than anyone, yeah.
yeah, exactly. We weren't supposed to be doing anything now, and we're doing this. So it's let's just take and my Adam from management told me something. I've been living by this now. I'm taking everything day by day, and that's happy enough for me right now. And as soon as there's answers to all these questions, usually people know before I do anyway. That always winds up on the internet before I know. It's funny because the fans are always happy to see the Savatage news now. So it's just crazy to see, the band get that kind of activity again this quickly. I mean, my Instagram site in April and May had over 2 million visits a month. It was crazy, and it was like double the amount of people that I would see other times, and it was fans from all over the world looking and checking in and watching my updates from the shows and looking at the new interviews and announcements and new fans every day signing on to the pages and people started sharing a lot of their personal videos from the shows onto my page, and I would constantly share them and acknowledge what the fans had posted, and that just kept snowballing, because I always stayed in touch with the fans. I never left speaking online as a person that people could ask questions to or have an ability to speak to somebody in a band, and I would always tell them honestly what was going on, and then people would always ask me what was happening with Savatage, and I'd be like, hey, my crystal ball is broken. I said, you know what I know, and when Savatage plays, which I pray every day that it will, I'll be there, and that's all I said. And I always told them the same thing. I said we haven't broken up, so I don't know, when it happens, it happens, and that's all I can say.
How's John's health now? We saw a few photos of him from Morriside Studios a few days ago, and he seems to be in a much better shape than I had
Yeah,
expected.
I'm telling you, I just saw him when we rehearsed at the late March into April, and he looked really good. He looked, not saying he didn't look bad when I saw him, but he looked better and healthier in those pictures. So I'm so happy to see that. In November, when I left to go tour with TSO, I had helped him to his hotel room. When he wasn't able to walk, I helped get him into his hotel room, and we'd spoken a lot that night. And I told him, I said, I've never done anything Savatage without you. And that's when he just said to me, would you go play these fucking songs? That's what he had said to me. So
With TSO being such a massive operation, how can Savatage carve out space for itself without conflicting?
you know what? TSO is so well run, and everybody that has their job for whatever it is they do from top to bottom in that organization, and there's hundreds of people that are involved in that tour every year. They're all so good at what they do, and they're able, they're all people that can handle working in situations where if they had 10 different bands a year, a lot of the lighting companies and all the other production people do. And, you know, our management, Adam and Kenny, and Paul even came out of the school of one of the biggest rock and roll management companies ever. And they were able to handle AC/DC, Def Leppard, the Scorpions, Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, all these different bands at once. So, it's just working with people on that high of a level that are able to do things. And with Savatage, we just feel so lucky to have that machine behind our backs when everything is put together now, and it's running so smoothly, like, same way Paul always wanted things to run with us. And we're using Brian Hartley, TSO's lighting designer, is doing our lights for the tour, and we're using, BJ Ramon is one of our studio people who works every year on the TSO live shows in the sound. And we had members of our TSO crew with us because a lot of these people, you know, are very loyal to us individually as artists too. So we they're just very fortunate that we have a situation where the whole thing is a giant family, that the O'Neill family is keeping everything together for all of us. And that John is there, and we're all working together because John's always there when we're putting the TSO tours together as well. So I mean, it's just like I said, it's one big giant family. And I don't know if Savatage would be able to run as functional, and for me, literally how it feels, seamless back to where it was if it wasn't for having these people involved.
Do you feel that TSO, being a Christmas project, touring for a couple of months, restricts the whole thing, and it has begun recycling itself? I mean, can the fact that TSO is playing some Savatage songs, um, and now we have the Savatage official reunion after so many years, can this be translated as the new TSO is Savatage?
No, not at all. I mean, first of all, TSO was an idea that Paul had years before he started working in Savatage. And I know that for a fact because he would always tell me about this idea he had for working with a band that had limitless creative possibilities, that he could do things like his rock theater with. And when the Stories entered the Savatage records, that was a lot of that element that Paul wanted to bring into a band like TSO in the future. And Christmas Eve Sarajevo 1224 was something I heard a recording of before Paul started working with Savatage. Back before he was doing Mountain King, he had a demo of that when I was playing in the band Heaven. So it was never about Christmas. It was about a marketing plan that he had been involved with Joan Jett, that had her do Little Drummer Boy and opened up rock radio to her for I Love Rock and Roll. And he had this idea to do this with another band, but go to the heavy metal world with Christmas Eve Sarajevo. We never expected it to get as much play as it did. And Atlantic and him spoke about trying to find the way to be what they knew was an obvious hit to another level. And that's when Paul decided to bring out his idea for Trans-Siberian Orchestra. It wasn't about making anything that had to do with a holiday. It was just his idea of rock theater. And he was already working on the Romanov record. And that was really supposed to be the first record of that idea that Paul had. And, the TSO did the Christmas trilogy. Then in the middle of that, Beethoven's Last Night was done before the last record. So he was already bringing TSO to the other side while we were playing live. The first half of the show was the story from the Christmas trilogy, but the second half of the show was an over-the-top arena rock show that had 20 tractor trailer trucks of production. And, we went out on the Beethoven's Last Night tour playing music that was not on those records, and we did a few of those tours, and that's what we did when we went to Europe. And that's when we had started adding in more Savatage songs, and it was just natural for Paul because he'd been a heavy metal hard rock producer before he met us. He was producing Aerosmith and working with Joan, and he worked with Heaven and a bunch of other bands, and that was just that side of him coming out. He wasn't trying to make any particular type of music represent TSO. That just happened to be what was the thing that really threw the whole thing over the top. So with Savatage now, we're just getting a chance to be Savatage, and TSO will still be TSO when we go to do that later this year. That will still be the same band, and I'm sure just like any year we'll be adding in some of that music into the show. I have not seen any of the set list yet, nor do I ask or say anything about it until after the very first show is done. That's always been the process with this, so I don't have any answers as to what's going to be
Yeah.
in the next show. But that was Paul's baby, and being the producer of TSO and Savatage since 1987, it's been a long history of some really awesome music that thankfully we were able to intertwine with TSO. But now Savatage is able to be Savatage on the shows we're doing, and it's definitely not that we've turned into TSO. It's crazy because it was two separate entities that just had the same creative engine and the same business engine. So there was a lot of the same personality coming through a lot of the different elements in the band. Of course, the original lineup at TSO had all of us from Savatage in the band. Nobody really knew what was going to happen. We were all just the only band Paul had at that point in time. It's like, well, we need to do Rosie O'Donnell. We need to do the Tonight Show. So we just went in there and started playing. And then we went to do live shows, and let's go, you guys. We're going to play a show. So that's how it developed that way. Savatage just happened to be there. It's like.
And the Savatage vinyl reissues were a great chance to reignite the discussion and the interest around the name and the legacy of the band.
Yeah.
What's the feedback you have taken from those? You should know that almost all of them charted in Greece in the top 10.
Wow, yeah, I know. I think it did really well in Germany and some other places. I think it's great because there was a lot of history that went along with the re-releases, and I know Kenny Kaplan and Night Castle Management, they put that together, and they did a tremendous amount of work making sure that every one of those individual records were really special. And I think that it became more like Savatage museum pieces. They weren't like original vinyls, and if there was no vinyl, it would be the first one. But it was, for a lot of places that didn't have a chance to get vinyl, this was just a really special version. There was extra songs, there was extra pictures and art and memories, and studio charts and lyrics and little thing. It was just, like I said, it was like a giant Savatage history book that for me was a lot of fun, because every time another one got released is when I would get the vinyl in my front door and my postage stuff. And it was so fun to open the box and open up the vinyls and look through every one of those records individually, because I was contributing things I had, passes and tickets and pictures and whatever information I could do for every record, but I had not seen the finished products until they wound up at my house. So me, like all the fans, I was opening it up for the first time.
Like a box of tricks.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. Which Savatage song do you feel is the most underrated in the entire catalog?
Underrated. It's an
Yeah.
interesting question. I think God, underrated. I don't think anything Savatage really did was underrated. I always said it was under-recognized. It's like everybody always really rated Savatage well, but just a lot of people may not have known who Savatage was or had heard of the song. I do think that something like When the Crowds Are Gone, the initial bringing of John Oliva's piano abilities into the heavy metal that way, I think that it was a really important part of heavy metal history. There was bands like Queen and other bands that had keyboards in their music, but there wasn't a whole lot of metal bands really that had that kind of an instrument in the band, and that's John was literally becoming a piano player in Savatage, and I think that in some ways, that and gutter ballet itself, I think is something that maybe could be that. I think, yeah, if you want to maybe put it underrated, you could put it onto the gutter ballet song itself, because that was a really unique um weaving together of the piano and the heavy metal.
Yeah.
It was, in a lot of ways, even when you look at the gutter video and the crowds video, it was the first time that I remember seeing, orchestras playing with the metal band. I know that some people had probably done it before. I'm not going to take credit or have us take credit for that, but I had never personally seen it. So it was something that was very, very new to me when we had done it. And, now you see so many bands going and playing with orchestras at the festivals and on TV and playing their music that way. So,
Yeah.
like I said, I think it's just maybe Savatage can fall into the under-recognized more than underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different Chris Oliva
Perspectives. Yeah.
guitar things that could be considered underrated in the world of guitar players if they never heard him. But like I said, once guitar players listen to him, they hear immediately how great he was. So it's always kind of hard to think of that. Same way like a song like Beyond the Doors of the Dark, John Oliva's heavy metal vocal performance in that song to me is one of the greatest heavy metal vocal performances ever, from top to bottom, one single song, all the different elements and octaves and timbres and things he did in that one particular song. I could consider that to be one of the most underrated heavy metal vocal performances ever.
Yeah. What is the one piece of advice you would give to 18-year-old Chris now, with all the experience that you have?
Don't listen to your brother,
What
because
did, what did your brother tell you?
well, he was the one who wanted me to leave the band to go back to my band and play with him, and I had made that decision. Back then, it was weird if you played with more than one band. It wasn't like now where it was
Yeah.
acceptable to be in multiple bands. You were in one band or another band, and it was kind of like that. And I think maybe follow your gut a little bit more. I wasn't being selfish when I made that decision. My gut was telling me to stay with Savatage. My heart was torn in pieces trying to figure out whether or not I should go back and work with my brother. He was very depressed at the time, almost to the point of suicidal. And because there I was out touring the world, and he was sitting there, working his day job, wondering, if he was going to be able to get a career as a drummer. And I don't think I should have put that responsibility onto me, but I think would just tell 18-year-old Chris Caffery to take a little bit more time before he makes decisions that important.
Can we realistically expect a new era of Savatage to, to begin soon, or is it more of a kind of wait and see?
Like I said, I'm doing this one day at a time. Whatever happens from here, I'm just so happy to know that this time exactly next week, I'll be in Germany, you know, um, probably sleeping because I doubt we'll rehearse the day I get there.
Yeah.
But I know that, Saturday morning when I wake up a week from now, I'll be back in the rehearsal studio somewhere with Savatage. So for me to even have that as part of my life right now, a year ago, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have even thought that. So, you know, in Chris Caffery's perfect world, I'm freaking Mick Jagger in my 80s playing with Savatage. That's
Mhm.
in my perfect world, but I don't see that happening with, who knows, but we're here now and I'm happy to be playing. Whatever happens, happens, and I'm doing it one day at a time. And I'm just thankful that the fans are still there. I'm really grateful for the O'Neill family and for the Oliva family and everybody who put this back together to help me, basically get this much happiness back into my heart and soul again. It's been missing. So I'm just gonna take it, like I said, one day at a time. What happens, happens. And like I said before, you guys will probably know before me.
A message for your Greek fans awaiting to see you.
It's been too long. And do not let me drink as much ouzo as I did at the last Rockwave. It was funny because we did that show and I didn't know exactly how strong ouzo was, so I drank like a freaking giant soda cup full of it with a straw and ice. I'm sitting out with the crowd, and you know, it it was fun. I remember going back to the hotel, and I think the Cradle of Filth guys always got a lot of laughs out of me in those kind of situations. I think I'm in their one of their DVDs, and I was like looking at Danny Filth and Johnson. I was just going, dude, what the fuck did you do to your eyes? And and then I went back to my room and I passed out, and I had a wake up call because I had to do Greek morning television the next day. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, I got up and left for a TV studio, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was on TV. And those guys got me to bed the night before, and they're watching the TV show in their hotel rooms, and they're going, Caffrey's on TV now. It says it's live, and there's no way he's awake. And I was. And I made it to the studio,
You
and
have studied. You have
I
studied
felt
at
kind
John
of
Oliver
fine.
University.
I think I felt less fine. We flew. It's funny how this is going because we're going from Spain to Greece. Then we went from Greece to Spain, and I think I felt a lot worse on that flight to Spain than I did that morning in the TV studio. I think I was, still kind of happy and giddy from the night before at that point in time. So it was easy to be on TV then. I wasn't I wasn't not able to speak or anything, but like I think I was just kind of like happy and giddy. And then, later that day when I had to fly, I was like, oh, this stinks. But
Yeah, but I
yeah, I
trust
can't
you.
wait to see the fans again. That energy that comes out of Greece, I try to compare it around the world, and I always try to say that the South American people remind me of the Greek fans, but a lot I think because of how much a lot of those kids didn't have a whole lot of their in their lives other than the music and that. And I said it's the same way with the Greek kids, but I said the Greek kids are just a little bit more crazy. I don't know exactly what make there's just a real like enthusiasm that flows into the Greek people. And I spent 15 years in Astoria, New York, living with Greek
Greek person, yeah.
landlords and roommates, and I had my Greek record label and this and that, and I spent the time around the crazy people of Athens celebrating the one
The
soccer
European
game.
Championship
Yeah,
football,
so
yeah.
I got burned by flares walking down the street. It was
I
fun,
remember
but
that.
you know, I just know that I put him on the list of the greatest fans of the world, and I can't wait to spend some time with them again really soon.